Hey, Crazy Will here. Today we're going to be talking about how to smooth your 3D prints. If you have an FDM printer and you want to smooth your prints, this video's for you. Stay tuned! Hey, Crazy Will here from Crazy Will's Tech Show. Today, we're going to be taking a look at 3D prints and how to smooth them out. Now, if you have an FDM printer like an Ender 3 or one of those types of machines, I have an Ender 3 and I have a Disway, and it's an FDM printer which makes lines and spools it out. I also have a resin printer, which you don't really have that problem with resin printers, but with the FDM, I do have problems. So I have a larger build plate and I do a lot of FDM printing, and I was running into the problem of trying to smooth these out. If you notice, there's a lot of little lines on your prints, and there are other ways you can get rid of these lines. You could do a smaller printer head. You could try to fool the software and make it work and go down to a lower level like I have. I haven't seen a difference. I usually stay at the 2.0 because I don't really see a huge difference in layer line height when I print this stuff, and it takes like 3 times the amount of time to print them. So I usually just stick with the standard layered height. But when you paint them, it looks good from far away, but if you get it up close, you can kind of see those layer lines. So I got a couple techniques that I'm going to share with you today that I've worked on and I think work pretty well. As an example, this was actually 3D printed. It's an Iron Man helmet that I made. Paint job didn't come out that great, and smoothing it was okay. There's some little things that I didn't like about it, but it was my first attempt, and I went through several different methods to try to get this smooth finish on an Iron Man helmet. And just to show you that it is 3D printed, you guys could see the layer lines inside and my Christmas lights. So yes, this was multiple parts to make an Iron Man helmet, and this was done on an Ender 3, the standard one, no special add-ons. I did it at 0.2 layer height, and I used Hatchbox and Overture to print this model. Overture was actually the faceplate, Hatchbox was actually the red parts of the helmet, and I smoothed it out, and I'm going to show you some of the techniques that I used to smooth out these models. I think it worked out pretty well, enough for me to explain it to you. So let me take you over to the workbench and show you some of the stuff that I use to smooth out these prints. Alright, so here are a couple of pieces that I did. The first one I want to show you, which was mainly done like the Iron Man helmet, is this one right here. This is actually for the Oculus Quest. It's a cover for the Oculus Quest, and it fits right onto the front of my Oculus Quest. And you can see the back side of it has all the layer lines, and so did the front. And I actually printed it like this, so that way I wouldn't have all this extra material in the middle. It was very rough. I had to take off a lot of supports here, and it made it very rough. So this was sanded a little bit, and then I used Bondo glaze and spot putty, which looks really rough, but that's what I used on this. And I used a combination of that, fill it in, sanded it down really nice. I used several different types of sandpaper. I started with 250, and then I go down to 400 grit sandpaper, and just slowly eventually get this. And in between that, I also, so I could see what I'm doing, I also spray it with primer. And I've mentioned this on my channel before, I really like Rust-Oleum 2X primer. I really like this stuff. I've actually switched over to white with a lot of my stuff, or I'll use a combination of white and gray. Like I'll do gray for the first coat and then sand it, get it all nice, and then do white for the final coat, so that way when I do my painting I don't have to worry about it showing through. You know, the colors will be a lot lighter, because the paints that I tend to use, which you can see my painting video right here, will show the background color. You have to do a lot of coats to get rid of that darker color, or to make the color darker in some cases. So the white is a good base to work off of, and that's what I like to do now that I'm doing like figurine kind of things. And in between that, I put coats of this, and then I go back over it with the Bondo. This has several layers of it to make it have that smooth finish. I probably got about 5 layers, and you could still see there's some imperfections that I could probably hit with Bondo again. Right there is one of them, you know, and this is probably nitpicking, and it shows up better on the camera than it does in my view. But there's little things that could be better as far as the smoothness, but overall you get really nice results. As you could see, that's a really smooth finish. Now that's all fine and dandy if you have large pieces like a Iron Man mask or something of that nature. When you get into the figurines and you prime them, and again I use the primer, which was the Rust-Oleum 2 Ultra Coat Flat Primer Gray. This actually has 5 coats, and if you put enough coats you can get a pretty decent finish, and you have to go over it, and I go over it pretty heavy, but you can still see, and I lost his swords. I don't know why they didn't print out right. So this is 5 coats of primer. You can still see layer lines, but after quite a few coats, it kind of goes away. And then there's parts that I should have sanded, like down here, you can see, you can sand that out and then prime it, and it would work better. Or you can even use other types of filler, like the Bondo. I highly recommend this stuff. It's a little smelly, but you could use that. But this is 5 coats, and you can see it actually made a pretty big difference. And I'll show you a picture right now what this looked like before I put the 5 coats of primer on it. And you want to wait a while in between coats. I do about 2 hours in between coats. Now there is a new technique that I've been using. I actually use this with the Iron Man helmet as well. It's a 2-in-1. It's a filler and a primer, and it's just like a thicker coat. And now if you look at this one, this is what I did this one in, and you can see it really does a nice job. And I got about 3 coats on this one. That's it right there. It's the 2-in-1 primer. This is by Rust-Oleum. I really like Rust-Oleum products. I'm not sponsored by them. They don't send me anything for free. Not yet anyway, if they get a clue. But if you look at it here, I mean, you could see the layer lines are very, very, very minimal. And I should have cleaned up a little bit and sanded it. And like I said, I really didn't go that crazy cleaning this model up. And I didn't hit here. Again, that's another problem area. I did not sand that or hit that there. You can touch that up, sand it, and hit it with the sprayer. So as you can see, the layer lines are very minimal when you use this primer filler. And like I said, this is 3 coats. This is the stuff I used. You can buy it on Amazon. You can go to your local hardware store if they have it in stock, and you just put nice coats, nice evenly coats, and you build it up slowly. Now, I wanted to try another technique. I'm going to mention it, but I don't think it was a very good one. But I used a combination of primer and clay. This is the clay I used. It's in a plastic bag right now. And this is my Captain America, just to show you. I tried doing it, and I used it wet, and I tried to fill it in, and I wound up making a mess out of it, really. So here's a close-up view, and you can see where I made a mess with the clay. I was trying to fill it in, and all it did was kind of get stuck to where the star was right there. In his chest area, filled in there. I was trying to fill in the lines. It did not work well for me, and I would not recommend this technique. I found it online. Somebody said, hey, use clay, fill it in. I think if the model was bigger, this might have worked, but it didn't work very well for me. So this Captain America, I tried filling it in. I even did it on the back of the shield here, and then I had to go in with a knife and cut it out, and it just, you could see, it just doesn't work as well. I thought it would be something where I could just rub it in and fill it in. And you don't want to use this either with these little models, because it's hard to spread it in there and get it in these little nooks and crannies. You wind up losing a lot of detail. The best luck that I've had is 2-in-1 primer filler. I mean, for these little figurines, and you don't want to go too crazy with coats with this either, otherwise you start losing detail. But it does fill in the layer lines, and I like the way that looks, as you can see. Alright, so another technique that I did was a combination of the techniques. I actually took the 2-in-1 primer, and I took the Glaze and Spot Putty by Bondo, and I used it to fix some of the lines in me. I actually modeled this in Blender, and this is a model of me, a YouTube model. I made a little like Funko Pop kind of thing, and he had a lot of layer lines because I printed this basically, let me pop his head off, like this on the bed, so all the layer lines were up here, and it wasn't very sightly. It printed pretty good, and you could still see a little bit of the layer lines, but I filled in the really bad ones. It had really bad cracks, and I wasn't trying to make this perfect, but it had really bad cracks right here, and I decided to put some Bondo in it and sand it down. And this is a large enough model that it wasn't going to hurt any of the detail. I did have to get in there and do a lot of work to try to get my hairline, which is very thin, obviously, to get back to normal. So it can be done, and then I use this filler to fill in the rest, and I probably could use another coat. I haven't actually filled it in. I got to do it again. It does need another coat because I'm looking at my foot there, and it needs it. But you can see in my head here, there was a big old crack there, and I wish I would have took some before and after pictures, but I was working on this and I didn't realize before I made this video. The other ones were actually intended for this video. Alright, so just to recap, you can do primer. Got about 5 coats on this. You can get kind of a decent look. If you want to do, I think it's $1 or $2 more for this can, It's 3 coats. I like the way this came out. Filler and a primer, both Rust-Oleum. This one was a combination of the filler, primer, and Bondo. And then you have just plain Bondo and primer. So you would do the Bondo with the primer, and that worked out really well if you want that smooth finish. That's how I've been filling in a lot of my models, and you can go the extra mile and go crazy with it, but I just want to share what worked for me and how it worked. The clay, not even worth mentioning. I'm gonna try it again and see if I can get it, but I tried it a couple times and I'm just not impressed with it. So, and just to show you what the 2 models look like together, again, 5 coats for this one, 3 coats for this one, just to give you guys an idea of what they look like. I'm actually doing a patch job on that one right now. Well, that was my technique. That's it for me, guys. If this helped you in any way, please like, subscribe, and ring that bell if you want to get notified when I make a video. And remember, you could do anything if you put your mind to it. Later, guys.
Putting food on plate, babe.
Okay, I'll be right there. It's over. That's it, guys. I mean, there's other videos up there. Or if you want to do me a huge favor, click the like button, or subscribe button's even better.